Coast. We're going to go ahead and get this started. My name is Randy Shrake, and I'm a director here at Blue Ridge ESOP Associates. And before I turn over this to our presenter today, I just want to go over a couple of things to get started. Number one, all lines have been put on mute. We will try to open them up at the very end if there are questions. But if you do have a question as Scott is going through his presentation, please type them into the Q&A box, and we will do our best to either answer them there or I'll have Scott answer them on air for everybody. One thing I want to let everybody also know is that we are recording this. So we are going to send out the link to the recording after it's over for anybody that you may know wants to hear about this, or if you want to be able to rewatch it, or it just so that it's available, but it'll be about a week or so after the webinar. I could be a little bit wrong there, but that's about the time it is before the recording's available. With that being said, we felt that this was a very important topic to kind of go over with our clients because of the fact that this is the first year in which many of you are going to see these lifetime income illustration requirements showing up on your participant certificates. And so some of you may have received your certificates already, others are about to. So it is very important that we give this opportunity to explain to you what this is about. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Scott Freund, who is going to go ahead and cover this topic for us. Scott, it is now yours.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate the introduction. And it just as Randy said, I think this is an important and timely topic. For those of our ESOP clients that have already have their ESOP statements completed and have had to provide them out, I'm sure that questions may have come up about it. And for those of you that haven't gotten to that point yet, it's more than likely some participants are going to call and ask, what does this additional disclosure on the statement mean to me? And so listening through this today, hopefully will provide you a little bit more of a background as far as why the Department of Labor has decided to add these illustration requirements to participant statements, and hopefully help you be able to answer some of the questions that you may receive. And to introduce myself, again, I'm Scott Freund. I'm one of our managing directors here at Blue Ridge. I've been working with ESOPs for quite some time now, helping to make sure that our ESOP clients are properly administered, in accordance with their plan design laws and the laws of retirement plans. I'm located in Appleton, Wisconsin, and go Pack Go. I'm a humongous Packer fan. So for our specific discussion today, I think it makes sense first to take a step back, because these lifetime income illustration requirements really impact benefit statements that you hand out to your employees. So I think it's important to really start out and understand what the historical content requirements really are, and what you really need to provide legally to participants on an annual benefit statement that you send out to your employees. Every statement has to show the total account balance. So participants have to see what the total value of their account is, as well as what portion of that account balance is vested. So whether it's shown as a percentage or shown as an actual vested account balance, information regarding the vested benefit has always been required to be included in the statement that you hand out. And in addition to that, to the extent there are different investments within a specific plan, the value of those underlying investments also have to be disclosed and provided on participant statements. So really, the legal requirements as far as what you have to disclose have been pretty minimal. Now, as far as what most of our clients do provide, and what I would say would be a best practice within the ESOP community, generally speaking, we provide a lot more information than that to your employees for them to see their benefit that they've received within the ESOP over the course of the year. So it most certainly is a best practice to show the different forms of activity that occurred throughout the year. So whether that's a contribution that you made to the plan, whether you paid a dividend to your ESOP, and that releases shares to be allocated to employees, showing those specific pieces of information I think are valuable for your employees. So they can be able to distinguish between how you get from your beginning account balance to your ending account balance. Showing the actual value of certain share transactions can provide a lot of value too. So in addition to showing the number of shares an employee received throughout the year, also reflecting what the value of those shares are can give them a better really appreciation of what their benefit is that they receive within the ESOP over the course of a year. Showing the actual per share price and number of shares is also very valuable. It's something important that a lot of ESOPs like to celebrate, how their value has changed from one year to the next. And also to the extent that you have non-stock investments within the plan. Not all ESOPs do, but many ESOP companies have non-stock cash investments that are also part of the plan. And to the extent that you do have cash within your ESOP trust, that has to be disclosed, how that's allocated to your employees on an annual basis. So for this next slide, it shows kind of a standard ESOP statement that I think a lot of our ESOP clients will probably see as being very familiar. So showing the beginning and ending balances of participant accounts within the different investments within their accounts, and then also reflecting the different types of activity, whether it be contributions or forfeitures or any other activity that may be specific to your plan. So an employee can see how they get from the beginning and ending balance, showing their total account and total vested account balance and the market value per share. This is certainly what we would consider as best practices that most of our ESOP companies are using as far as the format for the statement that is provided to your employees. Now, as we start to discuss some of the new requirements with regard to these lifetime income illustrations, the historical account requirements really didn't require companies or plan sponsors to show a benefit in the form of monthly income. And the Department of Labor really has had an initiative for a while to provide participants, with the ability to be able to really have a better retirement readiness. And they feel that a way to provide your participants, your employees, a better understanding of what their retirement readiness is to show how that retirement benefit could translate into monthly payments. If you think about it, once a year, everybody receives a statement from the Social Security Administration, which shows what your estimated Social Security benefit may be at retirement. That benefit is shown as a form of a monthly payment, since that's how Social Security is paid. For those that are fortunate to have a traditional pension plan, those types of historical pension plans also generally would pay their benefit in the form of a monthly payment. Defined contribution plans, though, like ESOPs or your 401k plan, are based off of more account balance and not how it can be annuitized into a monthly benefit stream. So the thought process being, if we can come up with a method to show how a participant's account balance could be converted to a monthly income stream, it may give the employee a better understanding of what their retirement benefit might look like. That is some of the goals behind what the Department of Labor and Congress has gone through to provide these new lifetime income illustration requirements that we're talking about today. So what is the new rule? So the lifetime income disclosure requirements were really included in the Secure Act. Around the end of 2019, Congress passed the Secure Act. It was an act that actually made several different changes to retirement plans with the hopes to make them better for participants. One of the other changes that came from the Secure Act, for example, was for required minimum distributions for older employees. If you recall, the age used to be age 70 and a half that an employee would have to start receiving at least a minimum distribution of their benefit from their retirement plan or IRA account. The Secure Act changed that to age 72. So there were a number of different changes like that that were put into place by the Secure Act, which was passed by Congress. And one of the other requirements are the lifetime income disclosure requirements. And what these new rules are, basically they require that you must provide 2 lifetime income illustration disclosures to your participants on at least an annual basis. The 2 requirements are that you provide how employees' account balance could be converted to a single life annuity to be paid over the life of the employee. In addition, you also have to provide it as a qualified joint and 100% survivor annuity. So that would provide a lifetime income stream both over the life of an employee and their spouse. So these new lifetime income disclosure requirements require us to calculate what those 2 annuity amounts would be. The Secure Act directed the Department of Labor to prepare a model disclosure. So it's intended to be a disclosure that explains how these annuity calculations are performed and explain the reasoning behind why that should be included and be part of your retirement statement. Along with the requirements of the DOL to provide a model disclosure, the intent was that if you, the plan sponsor, provide this disclosure to your employees, you have no liability for those annuity calculations. So it absolves you as a company of any sort of liability from participants for disclosing this annuity amount, which, frankly, is an estimate. So the next issue here is, when is the new rule effective? The Department of Labor issued what they would call an interim final rule that goes through the process of how to calculate the annuity amounts and provided providers such as ourselves with the model language as far as what disclosures have to be provided to employees. The rule was put into place September 18th of 2020. And when the rule was published, it was published to be effective exactly 1 year after the published date. So that meant that on September 18th of last year, the rule is considered to be effective and required for all companies, plan sponsors to follow. So it's live now for all companies. Important to note, the Department of Labor hasn't issued a final rule yet, but just because they haven't issued a final rule doesn't mean that we're not required to follow the interim rule. The interim rule is still law and is still a requirement that all companies have to follow. If at some point in the future the Department of Labor issues a final rule, they would have to provide some time as far as how, what the changes of the final rule would be and how it might impact these disclosures that we're preparing right now. I really have no indication that a final rule is pending right now from the Department of Labor. So as far as we're concerned, really, we're having to comply with the interim rule that was put into place back in 2020 and is effective now. Last year, the Department of Labor then issued some additional frequently asked questions just regarding some specifics. Of exactly what point in time do you have to start providing the income illustrations to your employees? And really, the requirements depend upon whether or not the plan is subject to participant direction of their investments or not. So for your 401k plans that are, generally employees get the opportunity to direct their investments, the illustration has to be provided by no later than 12 months after the effective date of the new rule. So by no later than September 18th of this year, one of those the annuity lifetime income illustrations would have to be included with the statements that are handed out to participants. So since most 401k plans are generating statements on a quarterly basis and providing them, really by no later than your June 30th second quarter statement, those annuity calculations have to be out there. So if you're working with another 401k provider and they haven't provided these lifetime income illustration amounts on the statements, they really weren't required then, but I'd say by no later than your next upcoming statement, these illustrations do need to be provided. Now, for any other plan that's not subject to participant direction, which would be virtually all of the ESOP companies that we work with, probably the majority of you listening to this presentation today, the illustration has to be provided in the plan year end that follows the effective date of the new rule. So for any of you that had a plan year end of September 30th, 2021 or beyond, the lifetime income illustrations have to be provided on the statements that are handed out to your employees. So now that we've spent a little bit of time going through what the rule is, I think it's important to then discuss some of the assumptions that the Department of Labor has directed us to use for exactly how we calculate these annuity amounts that have to be provided on the statements that are handed out to your employees. There are 4 factors that have to be taken into account. The factors very specifically are the date that the annuity payment begins. So if you were to go out and purchase an annuity as a participant, on what date would you get your first payment? And what's your age? How old are you? Obviously, the annuity calculation is going to be based upon what your age is up through the point in time which your remaining life expectancy. We have to take into account what your marital status is. We have to outline the interest rate. So for annuities, when annuities are generally purchased, there is a specific assumed earnings interest rate that the underlying investment would earn over a point in time that would dictate what the amount of your annuity payment is. So we have to have an assumption on what that interest rate is. We also have to make some assumptions on life expectancy. So how do we estimate what the remaining life expectancy would be for your participants? So for calculating the age and the date of the annuity payment, we're assuming that the annuity starts on the last day of your plan year. So for those of you with a December 31 plan year end, the assumption would be that the first annuity payment date was on that date, September 30 or December 31. And as far as the age is concerned, the requirements are that we assume that your participants are the greater of either age 67 or their current age today if they happen to be older. So when we're calculating these annuities, we're not looking at actual age for every single participant. We're assuming they're at retirement age. We're assuming that they're at 67. That's coming from the Department of Labor requirements. I mean, the current normal retirement age for Social Security purposes is age 67, which is the basis behind this rule here, as far as why we're assuming that you are in fact at your retirement age right now. So based upon what your account balance is right now, how would that be paid out over your remaining life expectancy?
Hey, Scott.
Yes.
Oh, I was going to say, we got a question here. My year end is 4/30, so April 30th, and I do not expect to get certificates until September, October. Is that within the timeline, or do I need to make sure it's done prior to 9/18 and 21? That was the question, but I think maybe it's 9/18 and 22 is what she's referring to in the date.
Right. So really, from the frequently asked questions, it basically states that if you're an April 30th plan year end, when you complete your statement for your April 30th plan year end and provide it to your employees, the annuity calculations, the lifetime income illustration has to be on that statement. It's not required. There's no requirement that it has to be provided by September 18th. It's just for ESOPs that are not participant directed. It just has to be included on the next statement that's given to your employees after September 18th of last year. So it's a good question, but really it's just whatever the normal timing process is for your annual administration process, and the normal timing for when you would complete your statement and hand it out. That will, as long as the lifetime income illustration is included on that statement, it complies with the rules. It doesn't, we don't have to try to rush and get it done by September 18th. Great question.
Also to confirm too, that this is for all employees regardless of age. It's just this age 67 is the age they're basing the calculations on, correct?
Yeah, it's age 67, or if they're older, then you use their actual age.
Right.
So we're assuming that none of you, and again, it's coming from the Department of Labor's, requirements, from this interim final rule.
Yeah.
We have to make an age assumption somewhere, and 67 is the age that was used. So, right, within our record keeping system, where we're calculating these lifetime income illustrations, we're taking into account what an employee's age is as of the plan year end. So we're looking at as of, say, for that 430 year, what each person's age was on April 30th. Anyone who's 67 or younger, we assume they're 67 for purposes of the calculation. But if they're older, then we're using their actual age. Okay, so thank you. So for the next slide, regarding the qualified joint and survivor annuity calculation, this is assuming that both the participant and their spouse are either the greater of age 67 or the age of the participant. So there's no requirement that you have to provide us with dates of birth for the spouses of all your employees. Thank God, right? So we're just assuming for purposes of this calculation that every spouse is the exact same age as the participant. And we also have to, for purposes of this, even if when you have employees that are not married, that are single, the requirement still applies to disclose what the joint survivor annuity amount would be if the participant was married. So there's no way to strip that away for any single employees. The requirements really require you to provide both. So, hypothetically, if the participant were to be married down the road, what that benefit could look like over the life of both the participant and their hypothetical spouse. That's the real age assumption that needs to be made for that joint and survivor annuity calculation. Now, the joint and survivor annuity calculation is going to provide a smaller monthly payment than the single life payment because it's assuming that between both the participant and their spouse, between the two of them, one of them is likely to live longer than the other. So a single life payment over the life of just a specific individual is going to generally provide a larger monthly benefit because it's going to be paid over a shorter period of time than a joint survivor annuity calculation would pay. So, any one of these calculations will always see that. For the interest rate, there's a treasury rate that's published. That's actually updated on a daily basis. It's called the 10-year constant maturity rate. And our interim final rule directs us to use that. So, and we use it as of the first business day of the last month of your plan year end. So for those of you with a December 31 plan year end, we looked at what the 10-year maturity rate was on December 1st. And that's the rate that's being used to calculate the lifetime income illustrations for your employees. As far as life expectancy is concerned, on an annual basis, the IRS creates an annual mortality table, which shows various mortalities. And the rule directs us to utilize the unisex mortality table that's published and updated annually by the IRS. So it's not really gender specific. By utilizing that unisex table, then you won't get different results for male or female participants in their calculations. It's just using that uniform table that does make it a little bit easier and to to perform those calculations by not having to use different tables for different participants based upon gender. So in addition to the calculation of the lifetime income illustration, the annuity amounts, the interim rule outlines some various explanations that you're supposed to provide to your participants. So an additional basic disclosure document. And the rule dictates that there's 11 different explanations within that interim final rule that have to be included in the disclosure that you hand out to your employees. So what are those disclosure requirements? Again, it's the intent is really to summarize for your employees how you're calculating and why you're calculating these lifetime income illustrations for them. So you have to disclose when the annuity would start and the assumption of what your age is. So that disclosure will specifically say, we assume that your age, the greater of age 67, or your current age as of today. There's a blurb that's required to be provided for what a single life annuity is and how it works. I mean, single life annuity is intended to be provide an income stream over your estimated life. Basically that, that has to be provided within there, as well as a summary of how a qualified joint and survivor annuity works to provide a benefit over your life and the additional life expectancy of your spouse after you would pass away. Has to discuss the marital status and age assumptions too. So the assumption that you're married, and the assumption that your spouse is the same age as you, age 67 or greater, has to be included in that disclosure. We have to show the interest rate assumption. So for those December 31 plan year ends, the date as of December 1st, the interest rate, I believe, was 1.83%. So that actual assumed interest rate has to be included in the disclosure that you provide, as well as the mortality assumptions that we're looking at a unisex life table. Some other requirements, and I think these are kind of important. The fact that these illustrations are only estimates and they're not a guarantee of payment. So by the virtue of providing these calculations to employees, you're not providing your participants with a guarantee that if they went out and bought an annuity tomorrow, this is what they would get. It's an estimate. And the fact that the amount of monthly payments really is based on a lot of different factors and could vary greatly from the illustrations. Utilizing a different interest rate can give you a different result or a different life expectancy table. The fact that payments amounts are fixed and will not change with inflation. That's part of the illustration as well. We also assume that the participant's fully vested. So when we're calculating these lifetime income illustrations, the illustrations are based upon their total account balance and not their vested account balance. So for a new participant who in year one might receive their first contribution and perhaps they're not even vested in it yet, that participant is still going to get a lifetime income illustration because it's going to be based on their total balance. There's very few ESOPs out there with participant loans, but we have to disclose the assumption that if there are any loans outstanding within your account, that we're assuming you'll pay that loan off by the time you retire. So all of these different disclosure requirements have to be included along with your participant statement that you hand out to your employees. Again, that interim final rule states it's a requirement. And the benefit, again, is for you as a plan sponsor. Why I think it's a great idea to ensure that these disclosures are distributed to your participants. By following the rules of that interim final rule and indicating those different 11 disclosures with the required explanations, as long as we're calculating those annuity amounts based off the rules and providing those explanations, you as a plan sponsor have no liability. You can't have a participant come back 10 years later and say, see the statement here, it showed that I would receive a monthly benefit of X, and I tried to purchase an annuity and it's worth less than that. Well, you disclosed it was an estimate, not a guarantee of payment. And so by providing that disclosure, you have that then protection. Hopefully that would never happen, but it helps to provide that benefit by having that provided. Now, as far as what the actual illustration will look like on your statement, I took the statement example that I shared previously in our presentation and just added the 2 line items to the bottom of it. So within the statement itself, and this would be the, how at Blue Ridge we are reflecting and showing the single life annuity and qualified joint and survivor annuity amounts are by adding those 2 additional calculations specifically to the bottom of your statement to show what that amount would be on a per month basis for both of those annuity calculations.
Hey, Scott,
yes.
I wanted just to clarify, because I did get a question about this. While Scott's been talking about these calculations and things, what he is showing you now is a sample certificate that you will receive from Blue Ridge that will have these calculations on there for you. You're not going to have to calculate them yourselves. You're not going to have to add them after the fact. On the certificates that we create for you, you will find these calculations and this information on there for you. So for those of you that were concerned that you had to do some extra math, take a deep sigh of relief and go, thank you, Blue Ridge is handling it for you.
Absolutely. Great point, Randy. We're not all actuaries, right? So it's quite a bit to go through and calculate these annuity amounts, but we've gone through the process and vetted it out to ensure that these calculations are complying with the interim final rule from the Department of Labor. And it's just automatically included on your statement as part of our normal services. There's no additional charges applied for calculating these amounts. It's just part of the cost of doing business. So it's just included within the statements we provide.
Okay, Scott.
Yes.
A couple more real quick on this. In this example, even if Larry is 28, this calculation assumes Larry is now 67.
That's correct, Randy. It does assume that Larry is 67. So it's not calculating so if Larry was really 30 years old, it's not determining what that monthly annuity would be, from age 30 through his remaining life expectancy. It's assuming he's 67 and what that payment would be from that point forward.
Okay.
Okay.
And so that was one question. The next one too is the annuity calculations are based on total balance per each participant, which is correct. Is there something that will explain how it is calculated in easy terms, which I think you're getting to soon?
I am actually the next 2 slides. I'm going to provide samples of the actual sample disclosure that you have to provide your participants. Whether it's easy terms, I think is probably arguable. I mean, just being honest, and whether your participants will fully understand that is hard to know. But there are specific disclosures that we have prepared for you that we'll provide to you along with your statements to hand out to your employees to comply with the disclosure requirement for the new lifetime income illustration rules. And I'll show those in a moment.
Thank you, Scott.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. So there were 11 different types of disclosures that have to be provided based off of the interim final rule. So on this next page here, summarizes how some of those different disclosures actually look. So for example here, the estimated payments assume that they begin December 31st and that you're age 67. Monthly payments beginning at a younger age would be lower since they'd be paid over more years. So some of those different explanations are included here. That the next slide here is actually the sample annuity notice that we're providing to to all of our Blue Ridge clients that provides some of the different disclosures that are required from the Department of Labor. So for example, in providing information about how we calculated your monthly income. These monthly payments are for illustrated purposes only. They're not a guarantee, and assume your account balance is 100% vested. So that, that's providing some of those information. Having this information now may help you save money for retirement. So some other things, the single life annuity, it's an arrangement that pays a fixed amount of money for each month for the rest of your life. And following your death, no further payments would be made because it's for the single life. Then qualified joint survivor annuity goes through that same calculation. So it's a fixed monthly payment for the rest of your joint lives. Going through for the qualified joint, we assume you're married with a spouse who's the same age as you, even if you don't have a spouse, or if your spouse is a different age. So this is intended to explain exactly how we're getting through some of these calculations themselves. Talking about the estimated monthly payments based off an interest rate, 1.89%, as required by federal regulations. The rate can fluctuate based off of market conditions. I think the rate today is probably a lot higher than it was on December 1st due to the inflation that we're unfortunately facing right now in the country. So these interest rates are going to likely go up over a period of time. And just some of the other things. If you decide to purchase the annuity, the actual payments you receive will depend on a number of factors and may vary substantially from the estimated monthly payments. This is really coming word for word from the Department of Labor requirements. So we're not really making it all up. They really require us to, almost on a word for word basis, provide those specific disclosures. And by providing those disclosures themselves, it does provide you as a plan sponsor with that no liability providing that to your employees. Now, the paragraph at the top of this annuity notice is something additional that can be provided to help start the discussion itself. And we have a couple of different options here. Basically by starting it out by saying the Department of Labor requires all qualified plans to disclose how the payment can be paid in the form of annuity. Please note, this is not an option or feature of the ESOP, either during employment or after an employment participant leaves. And the purpose of that is to try to disclose that just because we're providing information on what your account balance could be as a monthly benefit doesn't mean that you as an ESOP, that you as a plan sponsor are now required to amend your plans and offer annuity options. You're not required to provide former employees the option to take their payment over a monthly stream over their estimated remaining life. These requirements are just required to provide that disclosure, that estimated illustration that you put on your statement, and it has no bearing whatsoever on your current ESOP distribution policy for how you make payments to employees. I think it's a good idea to be aware of that. If that question does come up from your employees, that just because we're providing these estimates doesn't mean that you're now required to do that. Just some final takeaways, really. I don't think we're going to be using the full hour today. Again, you're not required to offer annuities as a distribution option. So it's a question that came up earlier on. I've given a couple of presentations on the topic itself, asking, our ESOP, we delay payments for 5 years and then make payments in installments over a remaining 5-year period, which is not uncommon for ESOP companies. We don't offer annuities, so why do we have to provide this lifetime income illustration to our employees? I think it's a fair question, but again, just kind of based off my summary here, it's the intention of the Department of Labor that by providing these lifetime income illustrations, it can give your employees a little better retirement readiness to understand how their account could be converted into a monthly income stream. So hopefully that the intention is that would be helpful. Some other takeaways, the illustration is just based off of what a participant's total account balance is today or as of their plan year end. there are not any assumptions which can be made on how the account balance could grow from their current age to their projected retirement age. I mean, you could utilize different time value of money projectors to project what a person's account balance could grow to in the future. It's tricky to do in the context of an ESOP when your accounts are invested in privately held company. As far as trying to project how that ESOP may grow, how your stock value may change over time, trying to project that out can be challenging. So there's no requirements or nothing within the calculations that are projecting it out. It's just taking what their account balance is at that point in time and calculating the illustration from that. I mean, reasonably speaking, a younger participant who hasn't been employed with you for a longer period of time, that maybe doesn't have a larger account balance, the monthly income illustration that is provided to them is probably going to be a small amount, because it's assuming that that person is at retirement age today. So what sort of benefit is that going to give to them today? That's probably, questionable. But it does show that it could hopefully show over time, as the employee's account balance grows, that monthly income estimate should grow as well. In particular for your employees that are nearing retirement age, it may be a more accurate representation of how their benefit could be converted into a monthly stream for them to compare against what they see from their Social Security statement or any other investments that they may have outside of ESOP. Mentioned the disclosure paragraphs really can't be edited. It is just required language, coming from that interim final rule. So we really do have very limited flexibility for what we can modify as far as how those paragraphs are put together. Now indicating an opening paragraph, like I had indicated before, that's just adding some additional communication to your employees. So adding something like that at the top of the disclosure itself, could help answer some questions that you feel you may get, just by helping to outline, this is a new rule coming from Department of Labor that we have to follow now. These are estimates. We're not offering annuities, some sort of paragraph along those lines. And our canned notice that we provide to you will have a paragraph like that at the top of the page that indicates this, the fact that annuities aren't an option within the ESOP. I mean, if you happen to be an ESOP that has an annuity option, then we have to modify that for you, but that's probably less than 1% of our client base. It's just not a common requirement for ESOPs to offer benefits to be paid in the form of annuity. Anyways, those disclosures really can only be modified a little bit like that. They really have to follow the rules. I'm not sure if anyone has any other questions within the Q&A or any other information that you'd like to ask regarding these new lifetime income illustrations. I've really covered the kind of the text of the rules as far as how we calculate those illustrations that are provided on the statements, and showing you how it would look for the statement that you hand out to your employees. Your administrator will be working with you, if you haven't already completed the annual administration process, to provide you with a sample of how that statement will look specifically for you, with those two lifetime income illustrations shown at the bottom of the statement, along with the one-page disclosure. And then when you hand out your statements to your employees, you'd also have to hand out that one-page disclosure along with the statement in order to satisfy the Department of Labor requirement that you're providing those explanations to your employees. Do we have any other questions that have come into the queue, Randy?
Will the disclosure also be provided in Spanish? One of our favorite questions.
That's a good one. If there's a need for your Spanish speaking population to convert that disclosure over to Spanish, that's something we can work with you on. The general statement that comes out of our administration system, it is in English. But we do have translation services that we can work with to translate the annuity notice into Spanish for you, for those of you that have a heavy, Spanish speaking population. So we can make that happen.
Okay, that is all I have for questions in the Q&A at this time. Are there any others? If so, please type away. I just want to cover a couple of things for the entire room here. That, as I mentioned earlier, we will provide a link to this recording for this webinar, so you have this to watch over again. At that same time, we're going to go ahead and make slides available with that link once it's ready to go and get it, so you'll have a copy of the slides to look over as well. We just got to see, will these statements be added to the employee's online account?
Yes. So for for those that have an ESOP website and have engaged us for ESOP connection services, that your employees can see their statements online, the annuity, the lifetime income illustrations will be included on the statements that are put on the website, and the disclosure notice will also be placed out on the ESOP connection site. The notice will be provided to all of your employees on the plan documents page, and we also have the ability to provide it as a separate attachment on the actual statement page itself for employees to click on and be able to view. So that information is available electronically. For those of you that are pointing your employees to the ESOP website to view your statement, the disclosure notice along with the statement itself will all be there to comply with that rule. That's a great question.
Yep, perfect. Any other questions out there? Because I don't want to cut anybody off short, but I want to thank Scott for taking time to help illustrate what this is all about, because I absolutely guarantee you, unfortunately, that you're going to get lots of questions about these certificates and what these new 2 lines mean. I know that for the most part, it's nothing that as an ESOP we tend to have to worry about. And I believe there was some good thought about why they're adding it. I just can't tell you what exactly the thought process was, but hopefully Scott was able to answer some of the questions you're going to get in here. Once again, as I mentioned, we will have a link to the recording as well as a copy of the slides sent out to you as soon as they are available. Any more questions? This is the last time I'll ask, just so we don't keep anybody around that doesn't need to be. All right, if we want to go ahead and stop the recording, I want to thank everybody for their time today. Hopefully you found this valuable for